We have some 4x laying around right here. I'm gonna measure those and see if they're 3.5, because I think if we use 2 of those and 2 2x4s, I think we're golden.
3.5?
3.5, 3'2", so those are too short. That's looking more 4-footish. Oh, those are, yeah, there you go. So we'll just use 2 of those. Hey, little guy. Apparently he wants to supervise our project today. Well, here's some 8-foot. This is kind of just looking like random wood. So I think we'll just take a bunch of this over there and then we'll decide what we want to do with it. Guys, if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, that sound should give you PTSD. I know it does for me. I spent way too much time behind that screw gun, and unfortunately we still have a long way to go with that screw gun, but it's a nice tool to have and it does a great job for what it's designed to do. They fit. Not if we put sides on. It's gonna be tight. Well, crud. Looks like without being an extremely good sawyer, this is not quite gonna fit. We're like 2 inches too close. The good news is I think we can salvage the project. If nothing else good comes from this video, we have proven one thing. We can make a pallet out of wood we already have. That's not very exciting. But today is kind of exciting, but I have mixed feelings. I've been going back and forth about doing this project because it's either gonna work out really good or it's gonna be a complete waste of time. And I guess you'll have to stick around to find out which one it is. So this pile of firewood has been sitting here for 2 years since we milled up our timber frame. This was the wood that we really couldn't turn into lumber per se, or it wasn't efficient to do so. So we stacked it in a huge pile for the day when we would be able to burn wood for heat in our house. If you haven't seen all the videos where we talk about how much value we got from the logs from that timber frame, jump back. It's ridiculous. We're still getting value from the, what, 4 log loads that we got. When we were milling the timber frame, we were under a massive time crunch. If we had more time, I think we could have turned more of this into 1x lumber, things like that. But we had no time. There was some lumber that we ended up saving out, and since then we actually turned that into the flooring that will become our loft decking. So we milled all that up last year. We're still waiting to put it on. But this stuff, just great firewood. And well, being silly, we didn't know what we were getting into. We started stacking it over here in a cute little stack. And pretty quickly it became obvious that we're gonna need a monster pile. And that's what we ended up with. There's probably somewhere around 8 to 10 cord of firewood in there. In case this is the first video you're watching on our channel, we've been building this house for a little over 2 years, and last winter we moved in, but with minimal services. We have an electric heater in there. It took care of us through the winter because the house is already insulated, because the panels that we built the walls from are insulated panels. We were able to stay comfortable in there for the winter, but we actually started our property here off grid, and we built this house as though we were going to stay off grid, although at some point we made a decision that it wasn't worth it and we tied to the electrical grid. But that's not something that we want to stick with. I mean, we want to be on grid, but we want to have the option to heat our house using other resources or renewable resources. When we first built our small cabin, being off grid, you pretty much only have 2 choices for heat. That's propane or wood. The wood worked really good for us. We put a big stove in there, but the cabin is leaky and it's not airtight by a mile. So we were able to keep above freezing, but the wood never really kept us warm. We actually used our RV heater for that. So all this firewood has just been sitting here. We burned through everything else that we had with the cabin. We've used some of it in our wood-fired hot tub. But this winter, I'm hoping, I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I'm hoping that we can get a wood boiler installed and attached to all the radiant tubing that we put in the concrete in our garage, and that we'll be able to heat the house this winter using a wood boiler. The problem is that wood is not dry. It's been sitting in that monster stack for 2 years, and even though we've had blistering hot summers, that's just never gonna dry out. The stuff on the top might be okay, but the stuff on the bottom is not gonna be able to burn well. It's probably gonna produce a little bit of heat and a ton of steam. So because we have a forklift on our property now, and we're gonna be using a wood boiler, we hope to be able to heat the house, a future shop, and our hot tub using a single wood boiler, which means we're probably going to go through a fair bit of wood. I don't know how much yet. We know these things are efficient, but we want to be able to move wood easily. So I thought it might be interesting to create some sort of like component type firewood storage so that we can kind of get our firewood and leave it out there until we're darn good and ready to process it. Then once we put it together, we can put it in one of these pallet crate thingamajiggers and stack them up so that they can season and dry. And then once we need them, we can either move them to the wood boiler, or we could even stage quite a bit of it at the boiler. That way we don't have to pack 3 or 4 pieces of firewood every time we want to load the boiler. We can just grab it out of the pallet, feed the boiler, and then when the pallet's empty, we can move it out. In my mind, making this pallet thing about 1 cord will make it really easy to inventory how much wood we have on hand. The problem is storing an empty 1 cord pallet thingamajigger would start to become quite roomy or take up a lot of space. So I have this idea to create a pallet that kind of collapses, and we've kind of stolen a little bit of ideas from collapsible milk crates and such, and we're gonna see if we can build something similar for a firewood pallet. So we're trying to kind of create this base pallet, which we'll be able to obviously pick up with the forklift, but when it's in use, you can kind of open it up and it'll hold 1 cord of wood. When not in use, it can collapse down, and that way if we had, say, 10 or 20 of these things, they wouldn't take up a lot of space off season. Most of our wood is cut to 16 inches. It's a really common size for wood stoves, and so that's kind of what we did, but we're not the most precise wood cutters, or at least we weren't at that time. So we're having to kind of, I don't know, wing it a little bit to make sure that the wood will fit in here. When we get to the wood boiler, I think we can put 2-foot logs in the boiler. So we'll actually end up with 2 rows of wood instead of 3. So we want to make sure that these pallets will do both. If you've been watching our channel for a while, you probably remember the man basket that I built. We're doing it a little differently on this project. So that man basket, I took the time to draw it out in SketchUp, a 3D design software, and I validated everything in SketchUp, and I totally went at it completely blind. I cut everything and then went to weld it, and everything fit. We're not doing that with this. This is a bit more like winging it type construction, and we're already running into problems, obviously. So this will be interesting for me. It'll kind of validate the time that I spend learning to use SketchUp and then designing things there. That way you don't go to build it, and now you're kind of like fabric cobbling things into a hoodookie that doesn't really work, and it's not easy to duplicate. So the plan is to build basically a front and a back, and then 2 sides. And the front and back will actually be hinged at the bottom in the middle and at the top, and they'll fold flat. And then the sides will actually be most of the structure for the pallet, and they'll actually fold in and up. And in theory, the whole thing will just fold down to about twice as thick as the pallet. So I think what we should probably do is build the front and the back and kind of lay them out and then start putting the hinges together. That'll help us to validate that design. And if that's going well, it should give us the measurements for the girder that's going to go around the top. And I think once we have all that, the two sides will be pretty much self-explanatory. They'll just go where they go. So let's start with the front and the back. So I'm already kind of walking around this thing, and I don't know if SketchUp can tell you this or not, but I can tell you that 4 feet is going to be too deep. So that's how deep we were planning to make the walls, 4 feet, which would be 1 full cord. We were going to put a half door in the front, which would give you about a 3-foot opening, which, yeah, I mean, do you want to measure that, Anna? What's 3 feet if I bend over and touch my toes? So that's as far as I can reach on a 3-foot wall. So the answer is 3 feet still too tall. You just can't reach in a 3-foot bin. So with a 2-foot bin, we can reach all the way to the bottom. So it's almost like these things need to be half cord pallets, not a 1-cord pallet. Because there's just no way to, you have to walk all the way around it too, which takes up a lot of space. I guess we need to kind of strategize on how to make the sides 2 feet tall, and then we just need twice as many pallets. That's the whole point of this, is to make it easy to move, not make more work for ourselves. I think they do this on fruit and produce pallets. They deliberately don't make them 4 feet deep, but I think there's another layer to that. I think it has to do with bruising the fruit. I think if the fruit gets too deep, it ends up damaging the product, so they don't want the pallets too deep either. And I think you also want to be able to reach in there to get the fruit in and out. So I think we're kind of learning that on the fly here. There's a reason that pallets aren't 4 feet deep, unless you can get into them from a third side. But we want this pallet to be a 4-sided pallet. So I think we're going to adjust from 4-foot walls down to 2-foot walls. All right, so we're going for 9-inch sides. I think we agreed on 5 per side, right? Correct. It'd be 27.25. We'll find out. We need 2 more, right? So we need 20. So we have 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Ready to flip it. Which way are you flipping it? Left-handed? Okay. That's not a half bad pallet.
Pretty strong. Kind
of learned on the contraption. Yeah, let's put just 3 2x4s. Call it a day. I think we can use the fabric hobbled ones. So this is 4 feet 7 inches.
Perfect.
So I'm just thinking, like, those 2 screws got no meat. Well, you could toenail them. So I guess that's okay. It's the middle hinge. It's not going to be holding most of the load. But we could up that to a 4x for extra strength. Yeah, and I had a great idea. Let's just scab a couple of 2x4s together, and we'll just make a board in the middle for those hinges to fasten to. 4'7". I don't know how we ended up with so many 5-foot. Oh, you know, I know. These are all pallet wood.
Yes, I was gonna say.
I think these were pallets that got torn apart. Got lots of twist in it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I got the drill out here.
Perfect. There, 4x4. Custom 4x4. Let's fasten these down and then we'll worry about those.
Yeah.
4-foot on center.
Sit.
So you should be 2 feet on center from the inside. That's looking more like a pallet. Before it gets heavy enough we can't turn it over. Nice thing about dry wood is it's pretty light. All right, I think I'm gonna work on getting all the walls screwed together. If you want to go find just a little bit more of that 1x material just for hinge attachment, then we're pretty close to putting the walls together anyway, or the front and the back. Last one?
It was.
Done.
Too bad, huh?
Not too bad. Oh, you know, we're on like the 10th iteration just during construction. So guys, this is not going as planned. There, I said it. I don't feel good about this. It's like, I don't know. This is prototype number 1, and I feel like this happened when we built our Rock Grizzly. Granted, the Rock Grizzly was never really going to take the beating that we put it through, and I think this will probably have an easier life, but we kind of had some design goals for this to be stackable, to hold a cord of wood. Well, we can't hold a cord of wood, and we're not sure it'll be stackable when we're all done, so we basically failed. It will hold wood, so that's good. So I was thinking, Anna, that you know how we talked about basically hinging the other sides on the pallets themselves? I was thinking that we could actually hinge the sides on one of these sides and have them fold flat. So basically you tip this side up, you fold the wings in, and then all you have is 2 latches on either side. You fold this side up, and now you've got a pallet. I mean, there's like 57 ways to do this. So why don't we try that? We had talked about doing a 2x4 side instead of using plywood. One of the other goals that we had for this was to maintain airflow so that the firewood will season. So we talked about exploring using 2x4 sides. We were going to use plywood originally for stackability, but we've talked about kind of looking at 2x4s as an alternative. Well, after standing here staring at this thing for a little while, trying to figure out how to salvage all of our time today, I think we've kind of come up with a plan J to maybe put some stackability back in this, and then kind of a creative way to store these side panels so that at the end we still maintain the storability too, and the whole thing is one collapsible unit. Something else I'm just realizing today, kind of talking out loud, is that when you're working with SketchUp in the cool garage, you've got a nice glass of lemonade, maybe it's quiet inside, you have a lot of clarity of mind. You can really think clearly and work through these problems, sometimes just stepping away and coming back. And today, it's just hot. It's not blistering hot, but it's hot. And I think I started the day dehydrated, and I'm definitely dehydrated now. And for some reason, it just gets harder and harder to think. So it's like the problems aren't that complicated per se, but like your ability to work through them gets worse. So maybe that's just one more vote against winging it, especially when it's hot outside, and in this case where we're trying to get something functional done. I guess if we end the day and we don't feel like we've wasted our day, that's progress, but this is definitely not going the direction I was hoping. It took me a little time sitting in the shade and thinking about this, but I realized that it's not going to work. I don't know if I just had like a really bad feeling about this project or what, but anyway, we thought we were going to put plywood on the side here, and that would kind of create the side structure that would make this very rigid, and then we could build kind of a stud wall inside on the piece of plywood that would allow us to stack and get us back on track with some of our design goals. And then I set the hinge on here the way I thought this needed to work, which would have been something like this. And it would allow the hinge to swing all the way around a full 270 degrees. The problem is that when we swing it around, that doesn't account for the thickness of the plywood. And so the plywood wouldn't actually lay flat. It would swing around like this, but it's not gonna lay flat against here. And I think just taking some time and staring at this, I think I've realized that we're so far removed from our original goal that it's not really worth keeping going. I mean, we're just wasting time. I think what I need to do is probably go back to the drawing board, do what I should have done, which is sit down and create a design in my chair and think through as many of the contingencies as possible. And then when it comes to the prototype, you have a lot less to think about. I'm not sad that we did this because I think we came up with some ideas that weren't obvious when we originally started, like the fact that 4-foot walls is never going to work. It's too deep. And then the fact that our firewood is not a really consistent 16 inches. It's just not. Sometimes it's 14, sometimes it's 18. So if you want to stack 3 pieces in here, you're going to have some fudge room. So making it 4 feet on the button, it doesn't make sense. And then there's also no room in there for airflow. So I guess today wasn't a waste of time. I'd definitely say it was frustrating because I feel like as soon as we got away from what we were originally going to build, pretty quickly all it became was like scribe fitting, and we're trying to make something out of nothing. And I guess pretty quickly we're just wasting time, energy, and money. So I think what we're going to do, we're just going to screw these sides on. We'll have effectively built a thing that holds firewood, so that I guess in that way we did achieve what we set out to achieve. We'll get some firewood in here, the stuff that Anna was working on. We'll let it dry, and then we still need to solve this problem sooner than later so that the wood has time to season before winter. Hopefully we'll get that wood boiler installed, and hopefully we'll have some dry wood to use in it. You can lay that side down.
I heard you.
Pretty sturdy. Ha!
Got one more. Firewood.
1, 2. Come on, fit number 3. Oh yeah, we got lots of room. I think we made it too roomy. Look at that. Well, we wanted airflow, so, well, and then we blocked it with the plywood. Design goals fail. But it looks like it's a big box that'll hold firewood, so I think we should take it over there and fill it up with all of your hard work. It works! It doesn't meet the design goals, but it holds a lot of firewood. I'll take a fist bump. It's been a hard day.
They're gonna try and get out of there now.
Baby. Some would say turkey is not meat.
Some would say. Those people are not hungry.
What do you think, more?
I think it's pretty good.
I mean, I'm sure it's cooked all the way through.
Yep, I wouldn't overcook it. Yep.
I don't know anyone likes rare turkey. Wow. Let's say it's not bad for one of my first time barbecuing.